All right.
Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of YOML. And I am so happy to be back again. And, because we had so much fun yesterday. So today we're on book 91, and we will be talking about, I guess, something to do with cheese and some part of it. But I'll let Chris explain.
Yeah. So the book that we're going to be talking about today is a book called Cooked, A Natural History of Transformation by Michael Pollan, which I think you guys are all familiar with Michael Pollan. I know Snow, I know you've mentioned you've read a few of his books in the past. I don't know if you've ever read any Michael Pollan books.
I have not. I heard of him, but I have not read his books.
Well, I finished reading his one about how to change the mind, about psychedelics.
Oh, I don't think I've read that one actually. So I'll have to check that. Was it good? You like it?
Oh, excellent.
I think he's an awesome author. I mean, he's probably one of my favorite authors. Actually, this book in particular, the one we're going to talk about, is called Cooked. I would say it's probably in the top 10, 15 books that I've ever personally read on this journey thus far, just from an overall experience standpoint, learning standpoint, a lot of new topics that were covered that I wasn't aware of. It was really cool. And it reignited my desire to want to cook these days. I haven't done a lot of it in the past couple of years, just given the fact that we've had two young children and our life was back and forth in the hospital and COVID and yada, yada, yada. So we've taken to the approach of ordering those meal kits and stuff like that come pre-delivered, and they're really good. They kind of just take food off of our plate at this point in time, and we can just eat in a hurry. But after reading this book, I'm rethinking my strategy. I really enjoyed this book, and I would recommend it for anybody. Basically, what Michael Pollan does is he goes through the four classical elements of fire, water, earth, and air, and how it can transform stuff of nature into delicious things that we eat and drink, whether that be fermentations or cheese, or how water affects things, or how bread is cooked and yeast interacts with it. I mean, it was just a really cool book. I really enjoyed it. It was a good time. So what this particular book made me think about was the title of Patience plus Presence equals Transformation. In particular, my family, I come from a pretty long line of cooks and chefs and restaurant owners and restaurateurs in my family. My great-great-grandparents started an Italian restaurant here in Indianapolis in the 1930s, and it's still in existence today. It's now fourth generation. My family runs it and operates it. It's a pretty famous local institution here, as well as one of my other uncles. He owns a little diner. Another one of my uncles started a catering food hall chain that was very successful and sold to a large grocery store chain. Long story short, like, food has always been like in my family's blood. My mom's an amazing cook, and she always spoiled the hell out of us with like beautiful meals every night, that we would all sit down and gather around the table. And I didn't really ever know that I was eating so healthy and good and delicious food until I got into college, right? And you're eating that crap food at Delta Chi or whatever, whatever the slop was that they just would slap on your plate, or the dorm food and McCutcheon, it's just garbage food. But I was telling Drew this at one point in time in my college career. I lived off campus my sophomore year, and every night I had to drive by this McDonald's, and I didn't want to cook, so I would get a double cheeseburger and a McChicken sandwich for $2, for $1 each, and that was my dinner. I swear to God, it was like that for like 6 months straight. I ate like a double cheeseburger and a McChicken, and I got home every single night. It's really gross. Anyway, I digress. I'm going back to the reflection. As I was thinking about my family's heritage and reading this book and the concept of patience and presence equals transformation, it started to make me think about my great grandmother. We used to always, after church every Sunday when I was a kid, she would host this informal get together at their tiny little house in the Italian district in Indianapolis. She would put on a pot of spaghetti and sauce and meatballs. After church, everybody would come over there. They would watch football, eat, catch up, have a good time, eat some chocolate, hang out with the grandparents and great grandparents. And we'd all leave when we wanted to. There was no pressure event. It was just come in, get some food, sit around, talk to your relatives, and go home. And I always had really fond memories of that. After my great grandmother passed away, that was probably back in my early 20s. That tradition kind of went away with her. There was nobody that was doing that every weekend anymore. In 2019, I asked my mom, who's kind of now, I know my grandmother still is the matriarch of the family at this point in time, but my mom is second in line in that matriarch, ship, I guess, if you will. And she's the oldest child of 7 children. And I asked her, I was like, hey, you want to bring back this tradition together? And she loves to cook. And I was like, hey, I thought this was a great idea to bring the tradition back for our family. So she was like, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. So she busted out my great grandmother's pot, the same pot that she used to use. She got it after my great grandmother passed away. So she busted out the big silver pot that was like, gigantic, that she spent all day. I didn't know, I'd never seen my great grandmother cook this meal before. So she spent like all day long cooking the sauce, and making this delicious meal all through the night, and then invited everybody over on an early Sunday morning, and all the family came over. We had a great time. It was awesome to get back together, and everybody, you could feel it. Everybody just missed it. Like, everybody was like, this is awesome. It's not for some stupid birthday or like some event or Easter or whatever. It was just family getting together, stopping by, saying hi, going back home. One of the things that kind of struck me the most is the process that my mom had to go through to make that sauce. I had no idea. I mean, it took like a full 24 hours to make that sauce. I always thought that my great grandmother would just throw it together in like, I don't know, an hour after church or something like that. I guess she's been just sitting over this awesome Sunday sauce that she'd been making all day, every day for my entire life. And I was like, man, what a labor of love. And in the book, he talks about, Michael Pollan, the author, talks about the cooking is really just a lot of patience and being present while you're cooking, making sure that you're stirring when it needs to be stirred and spending that time. And then a day later, you have this beautiful pot of Sunday sauce for the Iria's famous special sauce that goes on their restaurant today. Just putting in that time and that patience and that love, and then the transformation that becomes this amazing, dish. I know you're a cheesemaker, so all the patience and presence and time that you put into making a cheese, and then it transforms into this beautiful cheese at the end of the day. And it was just something that really, kind of made me excited to think about. Like, there's a lot of things in life, like in cooking, if you give anything the proper time and attention, it has the power to transform into something you could never have imagined, if you just step back and let nature do its thing. I just thought that was a really cool thing that this made me think about, and the story I wanted to share. That was a reflection. So yeah, I'd love to get your guys' thoughts.
Drea, what do you think?
So I have multiple different disparate thoughts. I think there's a fifth element that Michael Pollan left out. Maybe that's a secret element, but the element of time is essential to bring all the four elements together to create that transformation.
Yeah.
Right. So I think time is I think it's one of those versatile elements that helps the four elements that he talks about, talking about fire, earth, air, and water, to kind of activate it to make it transform, because without time, then none of these things would do any good. So I think, the reason why it comes to my mind is because you, in your reflection title, you say patience, right? Patience is one of those things where,
right,
to me, that's a big part of the ingredient of the transformation. So patient presence, like presence to me is like, I think the four elements can represent presence, and patience is just time itself. And having those combination would give you transformation that some of us will find it to be miraculous. The other thought is, for me, a lot of the memories that I've have is all involved the three F's, friends, families, and food.
Yeah.
Reason, that's the thing I remember. Even if the food was simple, I was able to remember vividly the food my mom made. I was not privileged to grow up in a family with a lot of great cooks, but my families are simple, but it also give me the good memories, and I think those memories make you who you are. And now that I've grown up, that I've becoming more interested in cooking, and I have 4 kids, and I cook for my wife and my kids. So to me, the patience in the cooking itself, to me, it's a reward in itself, because when you do it for somebody that is important to you, somebody that you love, the patience is just there. You don't have to muster it up from somewhere deeply underneath your emotion. And once you have the why, like our company core values, if you know your why, the cooking to me is enjoyable. I love cooking, and I really can relate to what you said about making the sauce. It doesn't take like 10 minutes. It takes 24 hours, because you have to have time for that thing to transform.
Right.
And a lot of the good cooks, like, for whatever reason, they knew how to prepare some of these things and stock it up. And so, I mean, eventually it gets to the point where before I would take like whole day to prepare. And then at the end of the day, I found out I still couldn't make the meal. But now, because I cook more and more, a lot of the stuff I do, I just say, maybe I need this later on. So I would stock up on these things that is already marinated. And so I just need to take some of these, add some of that. And so even on short notice, I can probably whip up something that you would normally think would take you 2 days to make.
Right.
For example, you want to make a beef noodle, right? Beef noodle, it takes you 24 hours, right? Because you got to marinate and all this bone broth and all that. Right. So I do some of that, and I say, well, this is good to stock. So you kind of knew more and more, and you stock them. And then whenever somebody say, hey, I'm craving for beef noodle, you would just whip it out. You add some things that doesn't need as much time to prep, but the broth you already have. And so you just add a few things to it, and then you're good to go. So I think like that, I can really relate to making the sauce. Because making the sauce is actually the most time consuming and the most artful.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it truly is an art.
Next to meal.
Right. Oh, for sure. I mean, the sauce is the meal.
The chicken is just very bland, right? But if you have the right sauce and the right rub, it's just gonna make that thing the whole meal, whatever you want it to taste like. It's you're tasting the art of prepping the essence of the, I guess, I don't know, you call it accessory, but it's not.
No, I mean, it's just putting the time in. Like we said, when I think of the transformation side of everything too, it's not just the food transforming into this beautiful dish. One of the analogies I guess I was trying to get across is like, I feel like when you took away the food from my family, the family kind of transformed into a different family, like you bring the food back and all of a sudden your family transforms back into a family again. It's like there was a reason, the food gave us all a reason just to come out and come together and to be together, and I know it sounds stupid, but it's not. Like, I mean, like you said, food is important.
If you do anything, you have the number of ingredients, right? It's going to turn out completely different based on the ingredient you have, right? So if you have the friends and the family, but not the food, right? The experience and the memory is going to be different. But if the food were added in it, it's going to create a whole new set of memories and a whole new set of, different. It's just different because there's different ingredient combinations in that hodgepodge of whatever culture that you want to stuff is in. But that's the thing is for us, for me, I think we as a human species are very in tune to having the communications and the trading of ideas. And just like, for example, we sit around the campfire and we tell stories, right? That's how we pass on the history and the ideas from our grandparents to our parents to us and so forth and so on. And even nowadays, a lot of the business connections you make, you go to dinner, right? For a business lunch, you cannot trust, but for a business dinner, it's like, okay, I really trust that guy. I go to dinner with him. Right. So a lot of the partnerships and the connections and the relationship that people make is through dinner, it's through the food, and food has been with us for so long that it become a part of who we are.
Yeah. I mean, it's how we connect. So I want to get you in because you're the only real, professional food creator in this group. So
your opinion is the only one that matters.
Yeah. I like the story about how the food brought your family together, and you almost didn't, once it was gone, you kind of realized, oh man, how nice that was, your grandma doing that. It's a very primal thing, us eating together. It's easy to make relationships when you're doing something like that. Maybe everyone's satiating themselves and relaxed. It's almost in a form of having drinks too, you know what I mean? Like everyone coming over and having some beers or whatever is also a way people bond. And obviously food is really important to our culture and our species to keep going. I like Trio, you're talking about the time, and like how you can make beef noodle. It seemed like, oh man, this must have taken you like 2 days, but like nah man, 3 hours. I picked up the marinated chicken there, the this and that. And I think that's the thing. And Trio, you talked about it, how time is a large thing when it comes to cooking, and it takes a lot of time. And that's why a lot of people and a lot of businesses, like, do you guys have Wegmans where you are?
I know of them.
So Wegmans, but also other grocery stores do them too. You're like, they'll already have the chopped up vegetables that you can just buy, the marinated chicken there. And it's almost like you can pretty much just buy things and then heat them up at home. And I think that's where some conventions are lost in the art form of cooking for your family, because people are more stressed for time these days. And I think it sort of is a little bit of a lost art, let's say, because it's kind of like woodworking. Like you put your love and you put your attention to it, and it's meditative because you're focusing on stirring something. You're focused. One thing I think is more and more when it comes to meditation and peace and ease and having good days is focusing on something for an extended amount of time. And they did like a little research thing about people who are like constantly switching tasks, like end up having not as fulfilling days as people who like focus on one thing for a longer amount of time. I think it can make sense.
You can't get into a flow state at all. Like you can't enjoy. I mean, like when you're constantly going from task to task to task, you can never turn it into any kind of an art, right? Like you make cheese. Like I mean,
it takes time.
It doesn't. It's not. I mean, I can't imagine the process of making cheese is that hard, but it takes a long time and takes a lot of effort and probably takes a lot of presence and checking in and being there. And I don't even know how do you make cheese. I mean, he talked a little bit about it in his book. I remember actually telling you. Right. I remember I actually talked to you about this book right after I read it because Luca was spitting up.
That's right.
You know, like when babies spit up and the little curdling that happens. I forget what's the enzyme that you put
The
in.
rennet. Yeah.
Rennet. Yeah, that's it. He
I
was talking about that in his
yeah.
book, and I was like, oh shit, that's why babies' puke looks like curdled, because they have rennet in them, or rennet, or whatever.
No, but I mean, well, that's like an acid coagulation.
No, they haven't. Babies naturally have that when they're born, because it makes it easier for them to process the milk.
Human babies do not have rennet.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, so that's how milk turns into cheese immediately, and then when they spew up, it like, you know, it looks all curdled and stuff, because
yeah, but milk can also turn into cheese through an acid coagulation, and not necessarily that rennet though. So
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but like that was what I'm pretty sure that was what he talked about in this book. But it's irrelevant either way.
Yeah.
Like, but the point is like, I don't even know what the process of cheese making really is, but like I'd love to know. I'd love to learn.
Out for a trip one summer or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get back to my reflection here about this book. And Chris, I think it's really cool because you do give a nice reflection about the book, and it kind of like just stimulates thoughts about what goes on in our society and why this book is interesting. I mean, would this book have been interesting 100 years ago when it was obvious? Like people did this stuff, but there's definitely a disconnect because people are definitely quick to take on more responsibilities than they think they can handle, but they keep trying to keep up with that. And so, you know, they're burnt out for time. So they find shortcuts, and, you know, kind of lost arts of, let's say, like cooking or whatever fall by the wayside because, you know, whether your kid's got to go to soccer practice or Tommy's got to go here or other things that come in a way of taking all that time to cook a meal.
Yeah, those tasks that you're checking off the list are just tasks you're checking off the list, and never have an ability to ever transform into something else, because it's just quick repetition of tasks, you know, management at that point in time. There's no end game. There's no compound effect that happens when you're just checking off task after task after task. You have to spend time with it and figure out, you know, like I said, create that meaningful work environment.
But for some people, just like getting dinner served is a check box, though. You know what I mean? I mean,
and that sucks.
Whether you're picking up KFC or you're cooking pasta or something, I mean, sometimes it's still like a check mark. Like, all right, kids are fed, sweet. All right, let's wind down, let's go to bed.
100%. That's what Felicia and I have done these days, and it sucks because like she used to cook amazing meals too, you know, and like I miss them. Like I miss us sitting down and eating her meal together or whatever. Now these days we pop one of our pre-made, you know, very healthy macronutrient trifecta meal or whatever we get and throw it in the microwave and go sit down and eat. Actually, he talked about it in this book. People think they save time by microwave meals or whatever. He tried this experiment with his kids of cooking them all an individualized, you know, pre-made meal or something along those lines. And he was like, it actually took me just as long to cook like all these different pre-made meals and put them in the microwave and, you know, or in the, you know, heat them up in the oven or whatever it may be. And then when they all sat down and ate at the dinner table, there was just a disconnect because they weren't eating the same thing. Like they weren't experiencing the same experience together. And it was just weird. One of them's eating macaroni and cheese. The next one's eating this. The next one's eating that. And you're like, there's nothing to connect on with it, you know, to like go, oh man, this sauce is amazing, Mom. Like, you know, I mean, I don't know. It is weird. He actually talked about in this book too, you know, we obviously have this like love of cooking, like from the first time in human history, more people probably watch cooking on TV than do it in their home. You know, you think about the shows on Netflix of Christmas Bake Off and whatever, and you're like, oh man, I want to learn how to make that awesome thing, but you never do. You just like to watch people cook because it's cool to watch things transform, you know?
I think cooking is primal, right? We are used to cooking for so long that it feels like we're in the right, we're supposed to be. And I don't know about other people, but for me, when I cook, I feel relaxed. I feel very calm. Same thing with gardening, right? So I think these things is what we do for a species as a long time. So when I'm doing it, it feels familiar. It feels like I'm supposed to be where I'm at. It's almost like taking a break from the stress of the hectic and chaotic modern world that we live in. You know, so for me, when I start cooking, right, I tend to forget about everything else. It's like I'm probably, to be honest, it's like I'm probably most in the zone when I'm in a flow state when I'm cooking. Right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
That means like for whatever hours that I'm cooking, it's like that's all I do. I mean, I don't think about anything else. I just couldn't add another piece of information into my mind at that point. But when I'm cooking, like, especially when I'm cooking for the people that, you know, I'm not cooking for a restaurant. I'm not cooking as a job, right? I'm cooking for the people that I say, hey, for me, it's like if I cook, like if my kids say, hey, this is good or whatever, that's what I'm looking, that's the kind of repayment I'm looking for. So when I'm cooking with that in mind, I'm mostly in the zone. I'm really relaxed. I'm really feel at peace with myself when I do that. So if I'm really stressed out with this or that, and I just go cook or I go gardening because like I said, I like plants and we like nature. And I think most people, I can't say everybody, but I think most people would love to cook because I think that's primal. People love nature just because that's primal. I haven't seen anyone say, "Hey, I hated nature." I think the majority of the people would love nature because that's where we came from, and majority of people would love to cook or love to watch people cook.
Right. So, I mean, I've asked you like 3 times now, like, how does this relate to cheese making?
Cheese is milk's jump into immortality, they say.
I love that.
Because cheese making is a really simple process. It already happens inside a calf's stomach, right? Because there's that enzyme called rennet, which ends up snipping the proteins, these long strands of proteins, and it ends up forming a web. Think of like a fisher's net, like collecting all the fish in the sea. Think of all the fish, like the fats and the minerals. Then you end up like kind of wrapping this net around, and more moisture leaves, and so you end up with these solid balls of cheese in your cheese vat, and then you collect all those or whatever, and then you have cheese right there. So
it's like curling, right? It's like curling. You're extracting the good stuff.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
And then you decant like the water, the moisture, and all the things you want.
A cow does the same thing when they end up. A calf does the same thing because it makes cheese in its stomach, and the cheese sits there and it's able to absorb all the nutrients and fats and proteins and minerals slowly, whereas like the water part just ends up flowing through,
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's obviously like a cow, it wouldn't make almost like evolutionary sense. It's not gonna like squirt out turds, or like chunks of cheese. It's like the same thing with like a mom, right? She doesn't like squirt out like chunks.
Right.
It's in a liquid form. It's just like 90% water, And so, I mean, that's why there's obviously a debate among vegans. Cheese is disgusting. Are you kidding? You're just eating like a cow's breast milk. That's disgusting. You got weaned off your mom when you were a year old. Some people say that's the reason why cheese is such a comfort food, because it gets us back to our primal instinct when we were nursing from our mothers. And they might be right. Cheese does sort of like this nurturing. So maybe it is because, we were suckling on our moms, and a cow's milk and a woman's milk is pretty similar.
Regardless of what the reason is, I love cheese.
I mean, I don't know how you can't.
It's salty, it's fatty, it's got protein, it's
delicious. Yeah, it goes with everything. I mean, I don't know that there's anything that cheese doesn't go with,
I think cheese and chocolate don't really go good.
Oh, I don't know. I could probably find a reason to do that. Yeah, you could. Yeah, I can see it on a charcuterie board.
Well, I thought of maybe doing a grilled cheese with a Nutella spread, actually.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. Yeah,
we should try it. Yeah.
We know how it goes.
I mean, it sounds like an awesome process, though. I mean, like, how much time do you have to spend with it? After you make the initial cheese batch or whatever, like, how much time do you have to dedicate to like nurturing the cheese until it's able to eat?
Well, I mean, you can spend a lot of time, like after you make the fresh cheese, you have to put it in a salt solution, usually for a day or a couple hours, depending on the size of it. The larger the cheese, the more time it's got to sit in that salt solution, because you're aiming for like a salt content of around maybe 1 to 2%. But after you take it out, you just let it dry there. But like after a week or maybe 2, you'll start getting mold on it. So you got to wipe the mold off, because you can't have it in a dry environment. But what we've started doing, though, it's to make it easier. And this is what I think about 99% of cheese companies do now, is they vacuum seal the cheese, though, so that it just ages in like a plastic bag, so you don't have like mold growing around the outside, and then you just have to flip it, maybe once a week as it ages.
Does that impact it? Like, I mean, it sounds like probably the natural way is to have it mold grow on it and just
knock
it off.
The natural way is just like kind of that natural rind ends up forming, but then this is like a barrier layer, kind of like the plastic. But you get less loss though, because sometimes people don't like the rind, let's say, and so you get less loss vacuum sealing it, because you want the outside to dry a little bit before you vacuum seal it, but we get these breathable bags that let the cheese breathe a little bit, and we feel like that's better. So
when you eat your cheese with somebody else and you bring it to like a dinner party or something like that, like what does that feel like for you?
Honestly, it's like embarrassing.
Really?
Yeah, because I just don't like I don't like the attention about it. Like it's not like I was like, destined and wanted to be some cheesemaker. It just sort of like, kind of fell into it with my dad here, and it is pretty cool and stuff, but I just don't like the attention of it, I guess.
Interesting.
I think it's really good. I think our cheese is delicious. Like yesterday I went over to a friend's house for dinner and I'm like, here's some cheese. Eat it when I'm not here. You know?
Interesting. I feel like I'd be really proud of like, going like, this is something that I'm,
Yeah.
I put the time to transform it. From milk from a cow into
I mean, maybe when I
this.
was like, I do the sales, I do the bookkeeping, I help out with the infrastructure at the creamery, and I help my dad make it, but he's the one who's actually there Friday morning making it while I'm at school.
Well, very cool. Either way, it's
Right.
a unique experience, and I think it's awesome. So very cool. Any final thoughts, or anybody have any final thoughts in this book? I guess just in general reflections, answer the question, is there area of your life you're seeking transformation, you can use a little bit more time and
So I
attention?
think transformation, whether that's with food or with us as a human being, as a person, you need both time and presence. So I think a great title. I think having those two, try to see if you can add those two ingredients into your life if you want a transformation.
Yeah, it doesn't take much. Like Snow's saying, making cheese is not that hard. I'm sure the day-to-day getting in the weeds of making cheese is really not that complex necessarily, but
Right.
In totality, it takes somebody to nurture it along and to do all that other stuff. Or making my great grandmother's sauce isn't that complex. It takes time.
The biggest ingredient is time, right? So
Right.
you need to be present. Like let's say you want to transform yourself, right? And go back to what we say about the compound effect, right? If you say, hey, I want to be more knowledgeable, I want to be more well-rounded, right? Pick up a book and read 30 minutes a day, right?
Right.
It's just 30 minutes. It's not that complex. It's simple, but it takes time for you to start to slowly gaining that particular compound interest into the breadth of knowledge that you wanted or desire.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, it requires your attention though. I mean, that in that 30 minute, you should be
Right.
focused,
You can't
on
just
what you're doing,
listen.
right?
You can just listen, but
Right.
not even get another word into your head and process it. And so present, you need 30 minutes of presence a day if you want to be knowledgeable, and time, right? And so presence and time will give you a transformation that goes with everything. I mean, it basically boils down to the more breakdown concept of the compound effect.
Yeah, what are you willing to give your time to, and your attention to, right? And that's like whatever you do, that'll lead to something really cool that you probably never even imagined, like like you said, Snow, who the hell would have ever thought like turning milk into cheese someday would be a thing? I mean, like that, I'm baffled by the first person that ever figured out that process. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, how the hell did somebody learn how to do that? How the hell did somebody learn how to take a tomato and turn it into some amazing, beautiful sauce or whatever?
I think it's all by accident, right? We forgot, and then it it turned to cheese, and you say, well, can we still eat it?
I assume it kind of happened from somebody like just slaughtering a calf, because I mean, you needed meat, right? And so someone slaughtered a calf and cut open the stomach and was like, what the heck is this stuff here? And probably tried it, and it probably didn't taste bad. And I don't know, one thing led to another.
They learn how to make it themselves. How do they learn how to find that
passion, crave that taste again? And this is what I found before, right? Let's see if I can observe it again. So by trial and error, in enough time, you're gonna find the right configurations, or levers or combinations or ingredient, whatever you want to call it, the right combination to get you these results that you wanted.
I want to wrap this up with a meta thought about what we're doing here. We give an hour a day to the idea of Clubany in the presence of talking about these conversations, and to slowly but surely building on itself. 2 years ago, when the first Clubany word was entered into our mind of what we wanted this to become, like we had an idea, but we didn't really necessarily know what it was going to become. Slowly but surely over time, we're starting to see that transformation. Things are becoming tangible, understanding what we want to do here. Stuff like this that we're doing every single night. It doesn't take a lot. If anybody ever asks us, what did you do? Who knows where this will take us? If we were on a podcast someday, I would say the same thing that Snow said. We didn't do anything. All we did was talk about the stuff that we care about, and it wasn't that big of a deal, right? But it slowly but surely dedicating your time to that, you start to see whatever, magic starts to take place. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So cooking is an amazing process. This is an amazing process. So go find those things you can give your time and attention to, and watch the transformation happen over time. It'll be fun. Thank you guys both for joining. That was always a fun conversation, as always.
Good night.